What's up, gang? It's Dominic D'Angelo. I'm on site in Las Vegas for the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion. But we got to talk a little Monday Night Raw, and it's Rumor Innuendo, and I am with Robert Karplus, WD Creative_ish. Robert, how you doing, man? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you somewhat. You're our man on the street. There's a little bit of lag on the video, but that's okay because the content is what people are here for, Dom. As we see random people walking by in the background, and when you're in the lobby of a hotel, shocked they haven't thrown you out.
No, not yet. At least, not yet.
We'll see how rambunctious and raucous you get. A couple folks are in the chat already. Little raucous and rambunctious here. Got Alt Jake. Good morning. So my wife is a massive Swiftie, and I mean I like punk, but nowhere to the level my wife obsesses over T Swift. Joseph Wade Walters. Good morning, gentlemen, from a proud Okie and Punky. Dre Owens here. Good morning. Will Swift corner Double J in a match. And Travis Wadlow out. Nothing like R and I while walking the dog.
Hey.
Yes, and lastly, 6ix9ine went to Monday Night Raw last night, live in Sunrise. Pat McAfee will be missed. Yes, Raw was in Sunrise last night, despite the amount of times they kept saying Fort Lauderdale. It was them trying their hardest to make this seem important in a major city and not in an arena across the street from the, at the time, world's largest outlet mall, Sawgrass Mills, Dom.
Ooh, how about that? Largest outlet mall. That's a lot to take home there, Robert. I think.
The world's largest indoor outlet mall, I believe,
My
is what
apologies.
their claim to fame was.
Oh my goodness, how about that? Well, I mean, Robert, we got a lot to cover on Raw. It was a good episode, I will say that. But we kicked it off with Gunther and Orton. Randy Orton comes out and kicks off Monday Night Raw, saying that this is the first time he's done that in a while and wants to come back the next time he does it with being a 15-time world champion. Gunther comes out, says Orton made it personal, and then all of a sudden Orton gets attacked from behind by Ludwig Kaiser, sets up a match for later on in the night. What'd you think of this opening segment, Robert?
So this is a tough one because this was the first Raw in a while that I felt was just kind of there, Dom. It didn't inspire a lot of real excitement overall for me. It felt very paint by numbers, which is okay. Sometimes you're going to get a show like that, and quite frankly, the history of the South Florida crowds, especially in Sunrise, is one that you don't want to trust them with doing any sort of heavy lifting. It's not typically a great audience overall, so you want to make it as down the middle as humanly possible. I think Orton coming out there, this happy Orton that we're getting right now, this kind of jovial Randy Orton, it's a little odd to see. We know it's not going to last very, very long, most likely. And I think on the broader end, we know that Orton is very much a transitional challenger. He's there to make Gunther look good, and then both of them can go on their merry way to better programs. So it's not that it's not entertaining, it's just a little blah. And they can kind of afford to do that going into Bash in Berlin because they know that the international crowd is going to be supporting this. The international crowd is going to be fired up and excited for whatever it is that they're going to see. They're going to be thrilled to see a legend like Randy Orton wrestle Gunther. So Gunther coming out there and talking about the crowd being rednecks and not having brain cells and all that is very generic paint by numbers. And then the Ludwig Kaiser run in again. It's like you're playing through a SmackDown storyline mode game.
Well, what did you think of the? We'll just jump to the main event just to cover all this aspect of it all. What did you think of the main event? Did it kind of give you that same kind of blah kind of feeling in regards to how it's been positioned? I'm like with you on it overall with how it's a transitional kind of thing, but I understand the aspect of them wanting Gunther to have a big headline kind of main eventer to beat right off the bat, and I think that's the good move here.
Absolutely, yeah. But last week I thought was more successful than this week, striking the note about your grandfather and your father and you all being failures. That I thought was good. This was just, hey, we're trying to set it up to get to our main event and just kind of get this program over with.
Right. Yeah. There's that aspect of like, okay, yeah, what's next for Gunther? We know he needs a big win, and we know Orton. Like, we need to further something with Orton. There's more to what he's been doing because he's been losing, setting things up with Cody, kind of things like that. So there's a lot to play. It's like waiting for the anticipation. This is going to be a great match, though. I'm excited for it.
I definitely think it's going to be a great match. I think that the build is adequate. It is perfectly cromulent. It's not gonna light the world on fire. And I think that while Raw was, overall a successful show with some good matches, it was very much a skippable episode of Raw. I mean, 6ix9ine right here says the only time the crowd really got involved was the opening segment, CM Punk, and when Mommy showed up. The rest of the night was dead. I literally saw people sleeping in their seats. This has always been a frustration of mine as a WWE fan living in South Florida, and this being my home arena. Was this crowd used to only respond if it was The Rock, because he was the hometown guy. Otherwise, they just kind of sit on their hands. I remember going to Armageddon '02 when it was Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Three Stages of Hell, and that crowd was flat.
What what makes that? What do you think is the reason for that, Robert? Like the audience wise, like why don't they? You think Florida's such a wrestling kind of state?
So
I don't
northern.
know.
So here's the thing: Northern Florida, your Tampa area, your Orlando, even your Jacksonville area, that was more accustomed to getting wrestling. Down in South Florida, the Miami Arena didn't open until the mid '80s. So it was like either you went to some of the maybe the Fort Lauderdale War Memorial or something like that, which were smaller niche shows, or in Palm Beach there was a War Memorial, something like that. We didn't get a lot of huge shows down here. The arena that they were in didn't open until 1998. So it wasn't like you had really long-term smart wrestling fans. It's also a very transient town where people are coming from all over the country. So they might not have all been huge wrestling fans. Whereas in the central and northern part of the state, it's a lot more settled. It's very much a fair weather town. That arena, if you watched that show last night, you would think that the Florida Panthers are super over. You would think this is a main event level kind of team and organization that people just live and die over. I got news for you, Dom. You've seen those crowds for Collision. The Panthers would kill for those Collision crowds for a number of years.
How much did it? I know this is off topic. How much did it amp up when they went on the Stanley Cup run? Like, did they get more? Like, was it all good crowds, or was it still like, it's still an NHL kind of whatever subpar team?
They did a little bit. There's definitely it's kind of funny just because I would see on Facebook, and again, I worked for the organization in the front office for 8 years, and all these people that are now posting, oh my God, I am a diehard, lifelong Panther fan. I'm like, I have not seen or heard from you in a decade and a half plus where you were ever like, oh man, I'm a huge Panther fan. Because I had free tickets as part of a perk of working there. None of these people, they weren't showing up to games. They weren't wearing jerseys. They weren't posting about it online. Miami is very much a front runner town. We've seen it with the Heat. We've seen the Marlins won 2 World Series, and as soon as they win the World Series, the next year the fan base just completely drops off. It's not entirely the fans' fault. It has not been a historically great sports town with the owners. I think the Dolphins have sort of been the only consistent thing there, but that does translate into the wrestling shows. I don't think I've been to a wrestling show in the Fort Lauderdale market where it was truly white hot. The lone exception at all was in Miami the night after WrestleMania when it was the return of Brock Lesnar. That crowd went banana.
Yeah, that was a
And
nuts crowd.
and speaking of that WrestleMania, Paul Pedram here says conspiracy theory here, but Cole specifically mentioning Sheamus beating Daniel Bryan in 18 seconds is interesting, given he is main eventing the competitor's pay-per-view this Sunday. Very interesting. I don't know that is necessarily what they meant to do, because let me get even more conspiratorial here for you, Dom. SE Scoops is one of the sites that was reporting this. Bryan Danielson is not under a contract currently. So there is a very remote, insane, like alternate Deadpool universe thing where Danielson loses it all in on Saturday, and then he shows up in Providence, Rhode Island on Raw on Monday. I'm not saying it's happening, but it could happen.
Oh, it could. We've seen some stuff a lot like that before with somebody later on in the program, and it's a lighter schedule. Could be a lighter schedule for Bryan Danielson in WWE. It could be a little tempting. I don't know. The expectations wouldn't be on him as much, at least, at the very least. Okay, let's carry on. We had Sheamus and Pete Dunne. We expected this one to be more of a, we talked about a little bit of a Bash at Berlin kind of more setup for a match. Here, we got it here, and Sheamus won in a pretty interesting way, I thought.
We got a full-on match, and this is by the way the perfect example of the kind of match that deserved a better audience. If this would have been in a, I'll just use Chicago as the default, but if this was in Chicago, you would have had a white-hot crowd going nuts with these two guys beating the hell out of each other. Very European-style match, very stiff match. The crowd was just, they took away from what was a really great match. Dom, I'm going to recommend you may want to turn your video off and keep your audio on because you are experiencing a significant lag. Oh, and now Dom is, there you go. He'll figure this out. Dom is an excellent expert producer as he is broadcasting from the middle of the busiest lobby on planet Earth. Just an all-timer. We love Dom here. What was also an all-timer was a Braun Breaker video. Guys, I don't want to say that WWE already knew that this was not going to be the best live audience, but to put together a 5-minute long Braun Breaker video package to keep away from the live fans is absolutely hilarious. It was a good video. It was a strong video. It needed to set up the fact that later on in the show, we were going to be seeing a tournament be set, which, yes, made me feel like this is AEW, but we'll see where they're going to go with it. But I think reminding people how dominant Braun Breaker is pretty good. And what was also pretty good, as Dom continues to fiddle with his video and audio there, Maxine Dupree and Ivy Nile, for the 45 seconds that we got of that match, Maxine Dupree looked very competent, which is about as high praise as you can get for a Maxine Dupree match. We've seen before where she's fallen on her face. We've seen where that has not really worked to her advantage at all. Now I'm suddenly on a solo screen here. This feels very weird. I feel like I'm in a work meeting right now, but I'll take it. I think that Maxine has clearly improved. They knew they could trust her with Ivy Nile. It was a short enough match where you go, you know what? Maybe the next time Maxine's wrestling, maybe I'm going to pay a little bit more attention. I'm going to see what she does in the ring. It led to the Wyatt Six coming out, first Nikki Cross and the rest of the group. It's interesting to see that, with the exception of Bo Dallas, the rest of that organization has dropped their masks. They're just like, that seems like a lot of effort to try to come out there and put masks on. We're just going to show up as ourselves. I think the Wyatt Six segment worked to some degree, but I'll be honest, something's got to happen.
I'm with you on that. Can you see me better, or is it?
It's fine, Dom.
It's okay.
We're gonna power through.
Yeah, the Wyatt segment was fine. It's just it kind of, to the Randy Orton point, it kind of felt just par for the course. Let's continue this thing and see where it sets up at. But it wasn't like they're not packing the punch as they start off, and obviously that was bound to happen. But it just kind of felt leveled out, kind of like this Raw, like you were saying, Robert.
It was just, it checked off boxes. And I think that's really all that my big takeaway from this is that, all right, did we get representation from the Wyatts? Yes. Did we advance the American-made Alpha Academy feud a little bit? Yes. Next up is the CM Punk promo, And I think part of what they benefited from is the fact that that crowd had not seen CM Punk in quite some time, and he is very much a big star on a show that they knew there weren't going to be a lot of big stars because there was no Seth Rollins, there was no Sami Zayn. You gotta, South Florida is a big market for that sort of celebrity chicanery, and CM Punk absolutely qualifies for that, even if he was out there kissing up a little bit to the Florida Panthers.
He was doing that a little bit. But to your point, it kind of makes sense to try to get that crowd going a little bit and play the hits a little bit when it comes to, hey, sports team stuff, all that kind of thing. And that's Punk's bag anyways. But is he the Taylor Swift of men, Robert, do you think?
As I said last night on Twitter, if he's the Taylor Swift of wrestling, that makes Colt Cabana the Scooter Braun.
Okay.
He's not the Taylor Swift of wrestling. I think he's a little bit more divisive than that. Taylor Swift is sort of universal across women. They're going to go nuts for it. My daughter loves Taylor Swift. My wife loves Taylor Swift. My mom appreciates what Taylor Swift does. It sort of goes across ages. I think CM Punk is still a very polarizing figure to the people who love Punk. Yes, they are as committed to him as Swifties. I don't know that it's necessarily as universal, especially as we're seeing in this current run. I think this run is exposing a little bit of when there is no controversy with Punk, he's very much just a guy. And that's not a bad thing, but it's not quite the same edginess that you felt when there was a punk bomb, a pipe bomb. We call it punk bomb. Punk bomb would have worked. Why have we not branded that?
Yeah, there's still time, Robert. There's still time.
Just dropping a punk bomb. And then when Drew came out, we knew this was going to a strap match. We said it here last week. The tail end of this just sort of fell off. Much like Dom's internet, it was just weak and unreliable. And part of what made that not work was a strap match is predicated on I'm tied to you, but you're tied to me. And one of those guys, usually your heel, should be terrified about the prospect of being tethered to this crazed babyface. Drew was like, yeah, dude, let's bring it on. Let's go. I'm going, wait, no, that 1 and 1 does not equal 7. Something has gone off the rails here. I love Drew. I love Punk. I love what they've done. This felt like a false beat.
Yeah, that ending, to your point, really did kind of pit her out, and Punk's music hit, and it just felt very unceremonious, and the stakes didn't feel that high when you exit out of it. The one takeaway I got from it was that, hey, he made more sense to create an attachment to the bracelet thing, which, you think about, he related it to the fans and kind of really hyped up that babyface level to just a simple, Taylor Swift, kind of bracelet thing. So that was one takeaway I had with it. But yeah, the ending was yeah. And I'm sure if they went back and watched it too, they would have been yeah, I don't
know. One ending that, again, we may or may not have predicted beat by beat was New Day and Final Testament.
Did you predict the Ninja Turtles outfits, Robert?
No, that was the one part of it I missed, but I should have thought that. I do like that Odyssey Jones was not dressed like a Ninja Turtle. I joked that he was dressed like the Technodrome, but no, he was just in his other gear, which looked it was like diamonds, but it looked a little bit like Doomsday. So we're dipping into other IP potentially, but it's exactly what we said. A hot tag going to the wrong guy, the good guys prevailing, but the mistrust between Xavier Woods and Odyssey Jones still there. And my God, Final Testament is deader than dead.
I don't get it. I'm just you want to, if you're turning Xavier Woods, you want to keep that other faction elevated because they should be such the influence on him, and seeing the ways of like, okay, maybe like they're not New Day's not lack of communication. Communication is key in relationship, and Xavier Woods is not getting that. You want to think that Final Testaments, being the proponent of that, would be a little bit more elevated. So, yeah, I'm with you on that, Robert. It's kind of a little bit of a head scratcher on that.
A little bit of a head scratcher, another head scratcher. We got the Bronson Reed Miz no DQ match, which was fine. Crowd was super into seeing a table, but the fact that we're going to be getting Bronson Reed versus Braun Strowman, I don't think does anybody any favors.
Yeah, that's a little. I understand the visual aspect of it all, but I would be more apt to see Bronson Reed go up against somebody lesser size than him, or like that's still big but can still kind of go. Braun has shown us that he's not really capable of doing that. So it's how's this going to all line up a little bit? I'm with you on that one too,
Braun
Robert.
has been a lot of diminished returns. If anything, I probably would have held off on doing this and set up Bronson Reed versus Jey Uso in a first round match for the Intercontinental title tournament, so that you can have a chance for him to do multiple tsunamis and potentially take Jey Uso out of that tournament. Probably would have been how I would have handled it. I think Braun Strowman versus Bronson Reed makes Bronson Reed look smaller, which is not a great thing when they've made him look like this monster of late. And I thought there was more juice in the tension between Bronson Reed and Adam Pearce than there is in Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman, who has yet to really deliver a great match since his return, which has been like a year and a half now, maybe even 2
Yeah,
years.
I'm more for an Adam Pierce Bronson Reed feud than I am for Braun and Bronson. So give
Yeah,
me that one.
I would have liked to have seen something like that. I think that could have been interesting. Um, Instead, we got Dom against Damian Priest. Dom,
I'm so not used to hearing Dom on television that often that it's like I keep turning my head like they're talking about me. It's like no, it's not. It's Dom Mysterio. But yeah, like look, further in this Twin Terrors things, I like the Terror Twins a lot. What do you think of this? How is it elevating the Judgment Day? Is this are you kind of buying into the new Judgment Day, or is this like, are you going there with cautious optimism at all, or anything in that regard with moving forward with them?
I think it worked to some degree. They did leave the baby faces lying. They had the numbers. I do want to call out briefly that I thought the production on both the Priest and Rhea backstage segment and the Dom and Liv backstage segment, they did some slick stylishness to it. I thought that looked great. The fact that Dom challenged Priest felt a little strange, or was okay with the match or whatever it was. So you knew there was going to be some kind of chicanery. Carlito did take a bump. So, you guys can mark that down in your calendars. And yeah, it made you excited for the mixed tag match that we're going to get at the PLE. There was two more matches for this show. We put a healthy amount of time into Raw, but there was the Damage Control versus Isladon and Alba Fire versus the PFC. I'm just writing PFC. I'm not bothering to come up with the
You don't want
concoction
to
of that
say
name.
it. You don't want to say it. I
How
still
about
don't
you,
know what it is.
Tom? You're the wordsmith. Why don't you tell me what it stands for?
Pulse Fusion Collective.
I don't think the first word is pulse, but
Pulse.
it's fine. Um,
What is the P?
that's what you were drinking a couple weeks ago on
it's,
camera.
yeah, it's great. You're right.
But yeah, this was a fine match. It kept things moving. You kept the tag titles with the heels. We know that they're moving into a 6-woman tag match on SmackDown. I don't mind it. I still don't fully understand why Damage Control are baby faces, but this is where we are. And then in the main event, Ludwig Kaiser and Randy Orton, straightforward match. Very much you could have booked this in your sleep, but that doesn't mean it was a bad match. It was a fine match. It was the right finish. We went off with chicanery and craziness. Oh my God, they're fighting, they're brawling. Call the police. Have Roberto Luongo jump over the railing and try to stop things. So it was fine.
So, Robert, when it comes to stuff like this, and the Raw was kind of like, I thought it was good, but it's also like, all right, yeah, skippable overall. When it comes to this stuff, how much does the crowd get factored into that from a backstage perspective? And then like, okay, we're gonna be in, Fort Lauderdale here, where the crowd's not usually that amped up. This is what we got to do, but we can't give them too much either. Is that a big factor that comes into play? You think?
It absolutely is a factor when you're looking at the crowd. I mean, if you notice, there was a couple things. Number one, a lot of folks said the name of Fort Lauderdale, so you heard it from Sheamus during two different promos. Fort Lauderdale, like he said it twice. It was fine. Punk acknowledging the Panthers. They were doing a little bit of kiss up stuff there to keep that audience engaged, and it was a very strong house. It was 13,000 plus, and that is a very deceptively large arena. Um, for a hockey game, it holds 19,352, which is a huge number. That is one of the largest, barns that you got in the country. So even if you're drawing 13, 14,000 people for hockey game, it's still going to look kind of small. The way they structure the arena for Raw, it looked like it was packed to the rafters, which is a plus. But they did not trust this crowd to have any sort of major meaningful moment, because you don't want that, and then you constantly have to go back and sweeten it. The most bittersweet thing about Raw, Dom, was that this is the last Pat McAfee for a while.
Yeah, you know what? And like, you look at his year, the full year that he did it beforehand, like his last quote unquote season, he did it, and then this one, like he's just getting better. He's just good at what he does. The vocabulary and the vernacular he uses, and his ties with Michael Cole, the sense of humor he has, he really adds so much to the product. It's gonna be a void going there. I mean, they got a great team with Wade Barrett and Corey Graves over there too, and but it'll be interesting to see how the announced team lays out during this NFL season. But yeah, McAfee's definitely going to be missed.
I'm going to miss him because he even made stuff that wasn't very good entertaining, and that's a real skill, a real trait that no matter what they threw at him, he was game and he made it work. And you see his further connections in the fact that he's bringing Sheamus over for College Game Day as the guest picker when they're in Dublin. Like, he pays off in so many ways.
Oh, it's a perfect. He's a wrestling fan, and then on top of it, he wrestles, and the football connections. You really can't beat it. And then you think about how we talked about New York Fanatics Fest this past weekend. WE was a huge part of it. I think the biggest merch seller there out of everybody. So it's like they're embedding themselves outside of the entertainment world into the more sports world too. So it makes so much sense to do it. Yeah, and man, McAfee is such a good voice ambassador for both entities. So it's a great combo there, Robert, for sure.
He's a great combo, Dom. In spite of the fact that you were clearly using dial-up internet from the mid '90s, broadcasting live from AOL keyword rumor and innuendo, it was great. I will handle your plugs for you for
Thank
the
you.
sanity of those folks here, but you'd be insane to miss one of a kind with RVD, the Hall of Famer himself, Rob Van Dam. That new episode dropped yesterday at 4:20 p.m. On rvdtv.com. And then, of course, there's Straight Talk with the Boss with Magnum TA and Greg Gagne, where Dom sits down with two legends and they talk all the various machinations going on in the world of wrestling. Dom is currently in Las Vegas, Nevada, for the Cauliflower Alley Club events. So I would imagine, Dom, there's going to be some exclusive content if you are a subscriber over at One True Sport, where Dom is a contributor. But most of all, most importantly, Dom is here every Monday through Friday at noon Eastern for Rumor and Innuendo, which you can catch on a plethora of platforms live, including the WWE Creative _ish X account, the SE Scoops X account, and on YouTube on ad-free shows, Rumor and Innuendo, and Working Stiff. So on behalf of the laggingest lag who's ever lagged, Dominic D'Angelo, I'm Robert Karpolis. Best of luck in your future endeavors.
Follow me on AIM at Billy Baru 12. Billy Baru 12.